All right, we're going to be solving equations, only this time all of our numbers are going to be connected to the variable using multiplication or division. So we've got 4/5 y is equal to 5. Now the first thing you've got to know is that 4/5 y means these two guys are being multiplied by each other. So you've got a couple of choices, and I don't like the fact that they're kind of forcing you into using one of the choices, which is multiply. Because the other choice is you could actually solve this problem by using division. All right, but let's play their game because it says multiply. So basically, we want to get y all by itself. So how do we get y all by itself? Well, how do we get rid of 4/5? So I'm going to go over here on scratch paper for a moment, and I'm going to show you. So 4/5 is right here. All right, I just kind of put it there. Now, if we want to get rid of 4/5, we're going to multiply, and I'll use the dot, not the x, by 5/4. All I did was flip it. All right, I'm going to multiply by 5/4. And why am I going to do that? Because that gives me 20/20ths, which is equal to 1. All right. Now, it's important that I do that. Now, why did I do that? Because over here, if I multiply by 5/4, what happens? Well, I'm going to get 20/20ths y, which gives me 1y, which gives me y. So really, by multiplying by 5/4, I got rid of the 4/5, and I now have just plain old y. So basically what happened was I undid the fractions, which originally was being multiplied by, and I got just plain old y. Now, but whatever you do to one side, you've got to do to the other side. Now, notice my equal signs are all stacked up in a nice line. That's what we want. We want all of our equal signs going in a nice column here. And so on the right side, we have to multiply by 5/4 because whatever you do to the left, you got to do to the right. So 5 times 5/4. So 5 times 5/4 equals, and really, this 5 is 5/1. So we end up with 25/4, which ends up being, what is it, 8 and 6. Sorry, 6 and 1/4. All right. Now, what I find is students have a pretty straightforward, easy time with the algebra. It's the fractions, it's the negative numbers that kill them. So just if you need help, make sure you ask for help. I'm happy to help with the fractions and the negative numbers. So we end up with 25/4, which ends up being 6 and 1/4, which is 6 and 1/4. Now, right here, they're saying they want the answer as a fraction. So they don't want the answer as 6 1/4. Really what they want is the answer as 25/4. So they really preferred for me to leave it as 25/4. And that's kind of a typical thing for algebra textbooks. So the answer here is 25/4. Now, but that's not the answer, because really all they're asking at this point is, what are you going to multiply by? And so the answer is, we're going to multiply by 5/4. So that's really what they're looking for. But in terms of the algebra, the answer would be y is equal to 25/4. So again, we're not being asked to actually solve the algebra. We're just being told what would be our first step. And that's right here, what would be our first step. And so we've got 6x equals 4. So that means 6 times x is equal to 4. So how do we get this x all by itself? And again, we have a choice. We can either get x all by itself by multiplying or by dividing, but they're forcing us to use division, which is kind of a bummer, but that's okay. So what's the opposite of being multiplied by 6? Well, it's divide by 6. So we're going to divide both sides by 6. And what happens on the left? Well, the times by 6 and divide by 6 kind of undo each other, and we're left with just an x. Technically, we're left with 1x because 6 divided by 6 is 1. But we don't need that 1 because the 1x is the same thing as x, right? So then over here, the answer is 4/6. Now, I'm not sure if they would want you to do this, but 4/6 is equal to 2/3. So that's the simplified. So x is equal to 2/3. But at this point in the game, all they want us to tell is that, well, how would we solve this problem? We would divide both sides by 6. All right, now we're actually going to be asked to solve the problem. So we've got 3x equals 9. So that means these two guys are connected through multiplication. So what's the opposite of multiplication? It's division. So the left side is going to give us just x. Technically, the left side gives us a 1x because 3 divided by 3 is 1. All right, but we don't need that 1, so I'm going to erase it. And because 1x and x are the same thing. And then on the right side, 9 divided by 3 is 3. And so x is equal to 3. So that's what you would put as your answer. Now, if you really wanted to be sure, 3x equals 9, what we would do is we would replace that x with a 3 to see if we get 9. And sure enough, 3 times 3 is 9. So it's a true statement. So that means our answer of 3, x being 3, is correct. So now it's just division. It's negative numbers. So we've got negative 8x is equal to 0. Now this is so deceptively easy that students want to get this wrong. If you think about it, what does this mean? This means negative 8 times something is equal to 0. So what does that something have to be? Well, it has to be 0 because anything times 0 is 0. So we know that x has to be 0. But let's go through the algebra just to verify. So we know these two guys are connected through multiplication. This is negative 8 times x. So what's the opposite of multiplication? It's division. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 8. So negative 8 divided by negative 8 equals 1. So that equals 1. So we get x equals 0 divided by negative 8. Well, 0 divided by anything is always, 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 always 0. So there's your answer. X equals 0. And we knew that through logic all along. Again, they're doing the same kind of problem, only this time with just positive numbers. So we automatically, it's the same problem, basically. We know the answer is 0. But showing the algebra, we're going to divide both sides by 18. This right here equals 1. So you end up with m is equal to 0 because 0 divided by 18 is 0. Now we've got a couple of things. First, we've got some negatives thrown in, and we've got the algebra is now on the right side of the equation instead of the left side. So if this totally freaks you out, swap it, switch it. That's what I was trying to say. And just solve this problem instead. But I'm going to do this because I'm a big boy and I can do it. So how are these two guys connected? They're connected through multiplication. So we're going to undo that by division. So this says 3 times x, so we're going to divide by both sides by 3. And so 3 divided by 3, that equals 1. So that leaves us with just a plain old x on the right side. And negative 9 divided by 3 leaves us with negative 3 on the left side, and that is our answer. Now, if we really wanted to check it, we could do it over here. 3 times negative 3, and check to verify that it equals negative 9. And sure enough, 3 times negative 3 is negative 9, so that's a true statement. So that means our answer is correct. Fractions are just plain old numbers, just like everything else, so nothing to freak out about. So I'm going to solve this problem twice, because I'm going to solve it once using multiplication and once using division, and you get to choose which one is your favorite. All right, so first I'm going to do with multiplication. So the trick was, I know these are connected by multiplication, so ordinarily we would divide. But let's do multiplication, because the nice, cool shortcut of how to get rid of this fraction right here is to multiply by the flipped, the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by 7 over 1, and I'm going to multiply both sides by 7 over 1. And why am I going to do that? Because I get, on the left side, I get 7 over 7, and everybody knows that 7 over 7 is equal to 1x. So that really means we don't need the 1. It's just equal to x. All right? Kind of did a little bit of work out of order, but at least I'm keeping my lines all nice and neat, and we're all good. All right, so what is the right side? Well, you can do some cross-canceling if you want, but I'm going to do 28 over 7, because all you do is 4 times 7 is 28, 7 times 1 is 7, and then 28 divided by 7 gives us 4, so that's our answer. Another way you could have thought of that, right here, you could have said, hey, wait a second, this is going back to fractions. Hey, look at that. 7 over 7 is equal to 1 over 1. And so really, you end up with 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1, and everybody knows that 4 over 1 is equal to 4, right? So there's your answer. Now, this we solved using multiplication. We could have solved the problem using division. So 1/7, 4/7. Okay, so it's got 1/7 x is equal to 4/7. So I'm going to solve it a different way. And the idea is, how are these two guys connected? They're connected through multiplication. So what am I going to do to undo the multiplication? I'm going to divide both sides by 1/7. All right. Now, right here, 1/7 divided by 1/7 is always going to be 1, because anything divided by itself is always 1. So that's 1, and so our left side ends up being just x, because you don't need the 1. 1x is the same thing as x. So over here you get this ugly, funky thing, 4/7 over 1/7. Well, what does that mean? Well, you go over here on scratch paper. It means 4/7 divided by 1/7. And how do you divide fractions? Well, dividing fractions, the first fraction stays the same. The division turns to multiplication. And then the second fraction is the reciprocal. It flips. And so now you get 4/7 times 7 over 1, and you get 28 over 7, which is equal to 4. So that's the other way. This way uses division to solve the problem, and this way uses multiplication, multiplying by the reciprocal to solve the problem. They both work. They both give you the exact same answer. It's up to you to decide which is your favorite, using multiplication or using division. All right, so more fraction work And I think I'm going to do the multiplication technique. So I'm going to write down the equation. There we go. And again, you notice that if the algebra on the right side kind of freaks you out, go ahead and switch it over here and reverse the problem. But the first thing you're going to notice is I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to scooch this out a little bit. Why? Because I need to get rid of that 1/3. And how am I going to get rid of that 1/3? I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, 3/1, which means I have to multiply both sides by 3/1 in order to keep our algebra equation balanced. So what's going to happen over here? Well, 3 times 1 is 3. 1 times 3 is 3. So I end up with 3/3, which is equal to 1, which means we could just write x, because this thing right here is equal to 1 whole. And so we can just write x, because you don't need the 1x, it's just x. And then on the left side, what do you got? Well, you've got 3 times 5 is 15, and then you've got 1 times 6 is 6. So your answer is 15/6, but it's supposed to be a simplified fraction. So that means we know that we can, well, I guess that direction doesn't say it, but I see that both of these numbers can be divided by 3. So that's going to give me 5, I'm going to do it in black, 5 halves. And that's how you simplify the fraction, because over here on scratch paper, the way we simplify fractions is you divide the numerator and the denominator by some value, as long as that value can go into both of those perfectly, right? And so I'm going to use 3 because 3 works. And then 15 divided by 3 is 5. And then 6 divided by 3 is 2. And that's how I got 5 halves. And that is our answer. Getting there. We're getting close. So here, now it's the same exact stuff, only now we've got decimals. So we've got 0.6x is equal to 24. How are these two numbers connected? They are connected by multiplication. So we're going to undo that by dividing both sides by 0.6. And so we see that 0.6 divided by 0.6, that equals 1. So the left side is equal to just plain old x, because you don't need the 1x. It's just x. And then over here, you might use a calculator, 24 divided by, so if you're going to do it by hand, it's going to look like this, 24 divided by 0.6. But if you're going to use a calculator, you're going to type in 24 divided by 0.6. And if you do that, you get 40. All right, so x is equal to 40. And the last problem for the video is negative 2.8 is equal to 0.8x. All right, and so we're going to divide both sides by 0.8. Why? Because these guys are connected by multiplication, so we're going to undo that and work backwards by division. And so 0.8 divided by 0.8 equals 1. So we're left with just an x on the right side. And then we're going to use our handy-dandy calculator, and we're going to divide negative 2.8 divided by 0.8. So automatically we know the answer is going to be negative, because a negative divided by, and this is a positive, is going to be negative. And then 8 goes into 28, if I were to do that in my head. 8 goes into 28 3 times with 4 left over, so that's 3.5. So it's going to be 3.5 is your answer. So x equals negative 3.5. Now, how could we check that? Well, the way we could check it, there's our decimal right there, equals, and then 0.8x. The way we could check it is we could do 0.8 times, and we can squeeze in negative 3.5. And when we multiply that with a calculator, you better get negative 2.8, otherwise we goofed up. And so that wraps up this video.